Little girl brought an old man a bottle of water. But she didn't know he owned 23 companies. One evening, CEO Jordan was sitting on a wooden bench in a quiet park. His usually sharp eyes were heavy, his suit wrinkled from a long day, his mind lost in battles no one else could see. For the world, he was a man of wealth, power, and success. But inside, he carried storms that wealth couldn't calm. He pressed his hands against his forehead, trying to silence the noise of boardroom fights, market crashes and endless demands from shareholders. He had built an empire, 23 companies across finance, real estate, and technology. Yet, at that moment, none of it felt like victory. To him, it all felt like chains. As the evening breeze whispered through the trees, a small voice broke his silence. "Seer, are you okay?" He looked up slowly. Standing in front of him was a little girl, no older than 7, holding a half-filled bottle of water. Her dress was simple, her shoes a little worn, but her eyes shone with innocence and concern. Without waiting for his answer, she extended the bottle toward him. "Era, you look tired. Maybe this will help." Jordan blinked, almost confused. Nobody, not even his closest executives, had looked at him like that in years, with pure kindness, without agenda, without expecting something in return. He hesitated for a moment, then accepted the bottle. The coolness of the water touched his lips, but what touched his heart was the gesture. It wasn't about the water. It was about being seen. Not as a CEO. Not as a billionaire, but simply as a human. "You're very kind," Jordan said, his voice rough. "Why would you stop for a stranger like me?" The girl tilted her head, her golden curls brushing against her cheek. "Because you looked sad," she said. "And Mama always says when you see someone sad, you give what you can. I only had this bottle." Her words hit him harder than any business failure or financial report ever could. He forced a smile. "What's your name?" "Little one, Emily," she said brightly. "What's yours?" For a moment, Jordan thought about lying, just saying, "Jordan," without the weight of his title. But then he realized, this little girl wouldn't care if he was a CEO or a janitor. "My name is Jordan," he replied simply. Emily nodded as if she had met an old friend. "Well, Jordan, don't be sad. My dad says problems are like clouds. They come and go. The sun always comes back." Jordan let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. How could such wisdom come from such a small voice? He had read books, hired consultants, and paid millions for advice. But none of it had reached him like this child's words. He leaned back on the bench, looking at her. "Do you believe that, Emily? That problems always go away?" She smiled, missing one front tooth. "Yes, but only if you keep walking. If you sit down and cry forever, the sun will pass, and you won't see it." For the first time in weeks, Jordan laughed. A deep, genuine laugh that startled even him. He had been drowning in despair. Yet here was a child pulling him back to the surface with nothing more than a bottle of water, and a few simple words. Emily looked proud. "See. You smiled. You're better already." He shook his head, amazed. "Emily, you don't even know how much you've helped me tonight." The little girl shrugged. Eat was nothing. But it wasn't nothing, it was everything. As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, Emily's mother called her from a distance. "Emily! Time to come home." She waved at Jordan before running off. "Be Mr. Jordan! Remember, keep walking." Jordan watched her disappear down the path, her little footsteps echoing in his heart. He sat there for a long time, holding the empty water bottle in his hand like it was something sacred. He whispered to himself, "Keep walking." In that moment, something inside him shifted. The crushing weight on his shoulders didn't vanish, but it lightened. He realized he had been so consumed by numbers, profits, and losses that he had forgotten the simplest truth. That life was not about empires, but about moments. That night, when Jordan returned home, he didn't go straight to his study or to his pile of reports. He sat by the window, looking out at the stars, replaying Emily's words over and over. For the first time in years, he felt something he thought he had lost forever. Hope. He didn't know it yet. But the little girl's act of kindness was about to change the course of his life and hers. That night, when Jordan returned home, he didn't open his laptop or touch the reports waiting on his desk. Instead, he placed the small water bottle on the table and sat quietly. He kept hearing Emily's words. Keep walking. It amazed him. A 7-year-old had given him advice stronger than anything he had paid consultants for. He realized how far he had drifted from simple truths. He looked out the window at the city lights. To the world he was CEO Jordan, the man with 23 companies. But tonight, he felt just like any other man, lonely, tired, searching for peace. His mind returned to the park. Emily hadn't asked who he was. She hadn't cared about wealth or power. She had only cared that he looked sad. That purity shook him. For the first time in years, Jordan spoke softly to himself. Maybe I've been walking in the wrong direction. He thought of his childhood. The boy who once dreamed freely, laughed easily, and valued kindness over numbers. That boy was buried under layers of meetings, mergers, and endless demands. Jordan leaned back, closing his eyes. He could still see Emily's small hand holding out the bottle. A simple act, yet it had opened a door inside him. He whispered again, almost as a promise. Keep walking, but this time, walk toward what matters. And as sleep slowly pulled him in, he didn't feel the same crushing weight. For the first time in years, he felt a spark of hope. The next morning, Jordan woke earlier than usual. The city was still quiet, the streets below half empty. The sky painted with soft gray light. He poured himself a cup of coffee, but instead of scanning financial updates or checking emails, he found himself staring at the water bottle still sitting on the table. It was nothing more than plastic and a few sips of water, yet it felt heavier than the trophies, awards, and recognition he had gathered over years. Emily's words echoed again. Keep walking. But walking where? He had everything the world admired. 23 companies, power, wealth, influence. Yet a child's kindness made him realize he had missed something. For years, he had been running toward more deals, more numbers, more success. But deep inside, he asked himself a question he had long ignored. What was it all for? He sat at the table, hands around the coffee cup, and whispered, "What matters, Jordan? What truly matters?" That question would not leave him. It followed him to the office. When he entered the tall glass building that bore his company's name, employees greeted him with polite smiles. Some bowed their heads slightly out of respect. Some whispered after he passed. To them, he was the untouchable man on top. But Jordan didn't feel untouchable anymore. He felt human. In the elevator, he looked at his own reflection. A sharp suit, perfect tie, but behind the surface, he saw a tired man. Someone who had built towers but forgotten the foundation of his own heart. When he entered the boardroom, his executives were already waiting. Charts glowed on screens, projections filled the air with numbers and percentages. One of his managers began, "Sir, we've secured the merger with." Jordan raised a hand gently. "Not now." The room went silent. His executives looked at him, surprised. Jordan never postponed business. Numbers always came first. He leaned forward, resting his hands on the table. "Tell me something," he said slowly. "Are we building companies, or are we building lives?" Confusion spread across the room. They weren't used to this kind of question. One executive adjusted his glasses. "Sir, with respect, our duty is to maximize profit for shareholders." Jordan's eyes narrowed. "And what about people? The ones who work day and night for us? The ones who depend on us? Have we forgotten them in the race for numbers?" Silence. Nobody answered. They exchanged nervous looks, unsure where this was going. For Jordan, the silence was enough. It told him everything. His empire was vast, but it was hollow. He had taught his people to chase only numbers because that was what he himself had chased. The meeting ended quickly. The executives left puzzled, whispering to one another. But Jordan stayed behind, staring out of the tall glass windows. Down below, thousands of employees moved like ants through the building. Each one had a life, a family, a story. He had barely thought of them as more than resources. Now Emily's face appeared in his mind again. A little girl who gave without asking. A child who reminded him of the one thing his empire lacked: heart. That evening, instead of heading home, Jordan returned to the park. He sat on the same bench where Emily had found him. The air was cool, filled with the sound of rustling leaves. He waited, not even sure why. Minutes passed. Then, like an answered prayer, he saw her. Emily was running with a small backpack bouncing on her shoulders, laughing as she chased a butterfly. Her mother walked a few steps behind her. Jordan felt his chest lighten. He stood as Emily noticed him. Mr. Jordan. She shouted with delight, running toward him. You came back. He smiled, kneeling down so he was at her level. Yes, I came back. I wanted to thank you again, Emily. She tilted her head. For the water. For the water. He said softly. And for reminding me something very important. Emily grinned. Mama says it's good to remind people. Grown-ups forget a lot. Her mother reached them, smiling politely at Jordan. Emily, don't bother the gentleman. She's no bother. Jordan said quickly. He extended his hand. I'm Jordan. The woman shook it, her eyes widening slightly as she realized the name. You're the businessman. The one in the news. Jordan nodded lightly. Yes. But today I'm just a man who owes your daughter more than he can explain. Emily giggled. See, Mama. I told you I helped him. Her mother looked confused but smiled warmly. Well, she has that effect on people. Jordan stood for a moment, then asked softly. Emily, can I ask you something? Of course, she said, swinging her backpack. He looked into her bright eyes. Why do you care so much about helping others? Emily thought for a moment. Because once, someone helped me. When I was sick. A kind neighbor brought us food every day. Mama said we couldn't pay her back, so instead, we should pass it forward. So I do. Jordan felt his throat tighten. Pass it forward. 3 simple words that carried more weight than all his companies combined. He placed his hand gently on her shoulder. Emily, you may not know this. But you've started something. And I promise you, I won't let it stop. Her mother gave him a curious look, but Jordan didn't explain further. How could he? How could he tell them that a child's small act of kindness had shaken an empire and awakened a heart? That night, when Jordan returned home again, he didn't just carry an empty water bottle. He carried a mission. The next morning, Jordan gathered his leadership team again. This time, he didn't speak about profits or projections. He spoke about people. We've been given much, he said firmly. And now we must give back. Starting today, we will set aside a portion of our revenue for something greater than ourselves. The executives exchanged uncertain glances. Some looked nervous, others skeptical. But Jordan's tone carried weight no one dared challenge. He continued. We'll create scholarships for underprivileged children. We'll support families struggling with medical bills. We'll invest in communities where hope is fading. This isn't charity, it's responsibility. One executive finally asked, why the sudden change, sir? Jordan looked at him, remembering Emily's small voice. Because I was reminded that wealth without purpose is emptiness, and I refuse to live empty. The room fell silent. The decision was made. By the end of the week, plans were drafted. A foundation was announced. For the first time in years, the company's news headline wasn't about profits, but about giving. That evening, after the announcement, Jordan drove quietly to the park again. The place had become more than a bench. It was a turning point. A reminder of where his heart had shifted. Emily was there, drawing shapes in the dirt with a stick while her mother read a book nearby. When she saw him, her face lit up. Mr. Jordan. He smiled. Hello, Emily. She ran to him. You look different today. He raised an eyebrow. Different how? Happier, she said simply. He laughed softly. Maybe I am. Because of you. She tilted her head. Did you keep walking again? Yes, he said, kneeling so his eyes met hers. And I've started planting seeds. Seeds that will help other people. Just like you helped me. Emily's eyes widened. What kind of seeds? The kind you can't see right away. Scholarships for children like you. Support for families like yours. Help for people who need someone to care. Emily grinned, missing tooth and all. That sounds like a garden of kindness. Her words struck him again, simple yet profound. Yes, Emily. A garden of kindness. And you were the first seed. Her mother looked at him with quiet amazement. She didn't fully understand what Jordan meant. But she sensed it was something important. Jordan stood, his heart lighter than it had been in years. He realized he didn't just want to give money. He wanted to give presence, time, and heart. Over the next weeks, Jordan personally visited schools his foundation would support. He spoke to children who dreamed of futures they thought were out of reach. He met families crushed under medical debt and promised them relief. Everywhere he went, he carried Emily's words like a compass. Keep walking. One afternoon, while touring a struggling school on the outskirts of the city, Jordan stood in a classroom with peeling paint and broken desks. Children sat quietly, eyes dimmed by circumstances beyond their control. He cleared his throat and said, "From today forward, this school will have new books, new desks, and new opportunities. Every one of you will have a chance to dream. And to achieve." The children's faces lit up. Teachers wept silently. And for the first time in years, Jordan felt rich in the truest sense. That night, he returned to his penthouse, sat at his desk, and looked at the blank page again. Underneath, "Build lives, not just companies." He wrote another line, "A garden of kindness starts with one seed." And in his heart, he knew that seed had been a little girl with a bottle of water. Weeks turned into months. What began as a single decision in a quiet boardroom had grown into something far greater. The foundation expanded across cities. Scholarships opened doors for children. Families once crushed by medical bills began to breathe again. Communities forgotten by progress now saw hope returning. Jordan's name appeared in the news again, but this time, not as the ruthless CEO of 23 companies. He was now spoken of as a man who gave back. A man who remembered what it meant to care. Yet in his heart, Jordan knew the truth. None of this had started with him. It had started with a little girl and a bottle of water. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Jordan returned to the park once more. The bench was the same, the breeze the same, but something in him had changed forever. Emily was there, skipping along the path, humming to herself. When she saw him, she ran over with a bright smile. "Mr. Jordan? You came again." He smiled warmly. "I'll always come back, Emily. This park reminds me of you, and of what you gave me." She tilted her head. "But all I gave you was water." He shook his head gently. "No, Emily. You gave me more than water. You gave me a new life. You reminded me of what really matters." Her little eyes sparkled with pride. "Mama says small things can change big things. And she's right," Jordan said softly. "Because you, Emily, you changed everything." Emily laughed. A sound as pure as the evening wind. She didn't fully understand the weight of his words, but one day she would. As Jordan sat back on the bench, watching her play, he felt peace. True peace. He had built companies, yes. But now, he was building lives. And that was the greatest empire of all. He looked at the sky, whispering to himself, "Keep walking and keep passing it forward." The sun sank beyond the horizon, painting the world in gold. And in that moment, Jordan knew his journey had truly begun. Thank you for spending your precious time with this story. If it touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories like this one. Your support means the world, and it helps us keep creating inspiring content for you. Stay strong. Keep walking, and remember, sometimes the smallest act of kindness can change the greatest of lives.